other than ring. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown Sewer Commission meeting. This is a special meeting we've called tonight to discuss 3 items that have come up, and we wanted to deal with them prior to our next scheduled meeting, which is in 3 weeks. This is a remote meeting, July 21st, 2020. In accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, Goffstown Sewer Commission will utilize the emergency meeting provisions of RSA 91-A to conduct meetings through electronic means while preserving, to the extent feasible, the public's right to notice of such meetings and ability to observe and listen contemporaneously. Public access to the meeting by telephone, you can call 766-5646, participant code 785-645. I'll read it again. Public access to the meeting by telephone is 603-766-5646. Participant code 785645, and you have to hit the pound sign after the participant code. If you have any experience any problems with access during the meeting, you're asked to call 660-5000. At this time, we'll have a voice roll call beginning with Corey.
Corey White, DPW.
David Pierce, Commissioner.
Tim Redmond, Commissioner.
Rob Trapez, Commissioner.
Mike Ergo, DPW.
Lynn Pooler, Sewer Secretary.
And on the phone, we have,
Michael Trank with Hoyle Tanner and Associates.
thank you, Mike. We will offer an open session here for public comment.
Guess you got a comment.
Hello. I am going to take this in the hallway. Hold on. I'll just hold the meeting for 1 second.
That's a call for a commercial.
No, he was trying to reach somebody about tonight's meeting. Well, Mr. Euro, you're all done on East Union, right?
No. No, I've still got sewer manhole work to do. And flushing the lines and then televising and deflection test. Then we'll be done.
Is that a week?
Do you have
We're on
your,
Fairview now.
you have your own television?
No, but they have to hire somebody to do it.
Okay.
We don't have one. And it's not worth us to get one. You gotta be electrician, cameraman, and everything else.
Long gone are the days of lamp testing.
Yeah. Put a camera down there, you open the other cover, you see them all.
We used to have to do it with mirrors because you couldn't be in a confined space.
Yeah, you gotta do a mirror.
Of course, there's a guy down in the hole in the mirror trying to.
No, it's all part of their contract.
Sorry about the delay. That was our selectman's representative. I am going to text him the phone-in number, and he is going to phone in.
Yes.
All right, we're going to wait a second here for our selectman's representative to call in.
Hi, this is Chet.
Hello, Chet. Dave Pierce.
Hello.
We can hear you here in the commissioner's room.
Perfect.
Thank you, Chet. Sorry about the problem. Glad you could be here.
No worries. Thanks for letting me know.
All right. We've already done our roll call, so could you identify yourself for the record, please?
This is Chet Bowen, a select board member, and as of now, the only person in the room. My son may jump in every now and then.
Thank you, Chet.
4-year-old.
We've already had our public comment, and we seem to have none. Do we have anybody on the line for public comment, Lynn?
No.
Okay, we'll move on. The purpose of this meeting tonight, we had a couple of items that we felt needed to be dealt with before our next scheduled meeting, which is in 3 weeks. The first order of new business is number 15 North Mass Street, the former Halls Radio and TV building, which is now a barber shop. And there has been some discussion regarding sewer accessibility fees. I'm going to ask Mike Yurdo to explain to the commission where we are as of the present time.
Yeah, well, at the present time, there's a barber shop that was installed, right now with the halls, TV and the store. They were paying $100 for a treatment unit. They're based on 450 gallons. So they have 450 gallons of flow. There've been 5 chairs been put in to the barber shop, and I got an email from Bill O'Connor. They did a fire safety inspection, and there is actually no sinks into the establishment.
So, I'm sorry, David.
I'm sorry. No what for these?
There's no wash sinks in the establishment except for a bathroom.
Okay. How soon were you notified of this change of use that required us to be discussing this? How recently were you notified? Was it a week ago, a month ago?
I was notified last week that there was a barber shop, the end of last week, there was a barber shop at the Tommy Hall's old place.
Okay. And I don't have any records or knowledge of whether the building department notified you, or did the building department notify you? How did you find out?
I did notify through the building department, actually.
Okay.
I got an email from Mark at the end of the week.
And was there any request in that email?
Request for.
They were looking for their CO, as I understand?
Yeah, they were
something?
looking for a CO.
So it's a sort of a short notice situation where the sewer commission is finding out about this
Yep,
at the time when someone is looking for a CO. So I want to make sure that's on the record.
yep.
It's not like we were negligent in dealing with an application or dealing with the public where they had been waiting a long time for us to render a decision or discuss the matter. This is the first time we've actually been discussing this.
And just to add on to that, and to be clear, this is a change of use from the previous use of the building.
Yeah, the building's always been a retail. Tommy Hall had a retail, and with the Browns, there was a retail, so there was no change of use. With the barber shop, it is a change of use.
And now, Mike, could you please explain to us how our sewer use ordinance describes this business and what the required accessibility fee would be for the change of use for this application?
In the past, barber shops with sinks have been assessed for a hairdresser, and they've been assessed at 150 gallons a chair, plus 20 gallons per employee.
So that would be 5 chairs times 150
Yep,
plus 20
per chair,
Per employee,
per
yeah.
employee,
per
per chair.
employee. Okay, so you'd have to know if there's one barber there or 5 barbers or 3.
Well, they usually go by 5 chairs and 5 barbers.
All right, so at this time, what is the sewer accessibility fee as stated in our sewer use ordinance?
Right now, they're paying 450 gallons, which is one treatment unit, which is $400 a year.
So what would the accessibility fee be for the change of use based on our ordinance? The accessibility fee would be $5,000, right?
Well, it would be, yeah.
Well, no, it's 150 times,
Yeah, times
are you
five.
talking about the current?
I want to know when there's a change of use and they have not paid an accessibility fee in the prior use, then an accessibility fee is applicable if I'm not incorrect. Because an accessibility fee was never paid on this property.
No, they own 450 gallons no matter what. They don't even have to pay accessibility fee for. They own that from day one.
I understand.
So it'd be 850 gallons, then you would minus the 450, which they've been paying for, which they own. And you're talking $400, so you're talking one treatment unit.
Which
It'd
is,
be $5,000 accessibility fee.
so for one treatment unit is $5,000 accessibility fee.
Yep, that's 400 gallons, so it's a minimum of one treatment unit.
And then what would the monthly charges, the annual charges be for that site based on your flow calculation?
It'd be two treatment units, so it'd be $800 a year
$800 a year,
for
okay.
your fee.
Just sorry, for the minutes, you were saying there is a $5,000 accessibility fee that they would owe now, or,
They'll be purchasing extra flow. They own 450 gallons. That was theirs.
right.
So you take that 850 minus the 450, and that gives you 400. With 5 people, 20 gallons per person.
So they're both
That's
gonna
100
be
gallons there.
$5,000 accessibility fee and then the additional $400 a year.
800 a year according to what Mike,
Be
Additional 400,
additional
so it'd be
be additional $400 a year, which would make their total building $800 per year.
because they're already paying $400.
They're already paying they were paying for.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
all of that presentation was based on the selection of a category called hairdresser from the state listing of uses.
Correct.
Is that an appropriate category for a barber shop? Because I believe there's a distinction in the state between a barber and a hairdresser.
I'm sure the state has a distinction, but as I have been described to me, unless I'm reading it wrong, the state chart does not differentiate between hairdressers and barbers. This is something there seems to be is it in here that I'm not seeing it?
Yeah, no, there is no barber.
There's no bar, hairdressers on the bottom. Second page.
So as it is now, the state of New Hampshire Code of Administrative Rules does not recognize a barber shop as a standalone entity. This is why we're having our discussion tonight.
Correct. And would I be terribly wrong in suggesting that the category hairdresser refers to what is commonly understood as a beauty salon for women?
I would concur with your statement.
We're back to the same issue. Is the category hairdresser an appropriate category for this this application?
In my opinion, it may not be appropriate, but it's the only avenue we have at this time, unless we're going to cut new ground.
Since I believe that category hairdresser may be excessive for this business of a barber shop, it would be appropriate for us to pick something from the state list that is most fitting as a,
We can
Alternative.
have that discussion.
and I would suggest that there's two possibilities under a category called office buildings, in which one would be an office building without a cafeteria. That's 10 gallons per day per employee. This establishment has possibility of 5 employees. That would be 5 times 10 or 50 gallons per day. The other is an office building, unspecified space, 5 gallons per day for every 100 square feet. Well, this facility is 30 by 30, so it's 900 square feet. So that's 9 times 5 is 45 gallons per day. So if you were to, either of these categories might be fitting. There's a vast difference between 50 gallons per day and 850 gallons per day.
Well, I think that when you're talking about what use is appropriate and how this is going to be recorded, I think that the real key differentiator is whether or not it is a wet business that has higher flows, or is more akin to a commercial type establishment where you don't have an increase in flow. The table's not perfect. The table is actually meant for subsurface treatment design. It's typically conservative. But really, I think what we're after is whether or not this new use is going to have an increase of flow over what was there previous. In the regulations, again, keeping in mind it's for subsurface treatment disposal design, it does give an option to substantiate the flow with data.
Yes.
I'm presuming that they pay a water bill of some sort, and that is likely to be metered.
You won't be able to do that.
And that's gonna set a precedent,
No,
unfortunately.
we went to court, it was 7, 8 years ago, that one of the condominiums took a sewer commission to court to base their sewer usage on water flow. And we went to court, and we went to Superior Court, and we actually won, because we're using this table, and we haven't changed it since 1987. It's the first table we used, and we're still using it today. And we're fair to everybody. And that's how we won the case.
Maybe you're on the right track, maybe we just don't try to tie anything to a water meter, because it will set a precedent, because the first time you tie any sewer bill to a water meter, we're setting a precedent, which means we're gonna have to tie all sewer bills to water meters, because everyone's gonna complain that they're being unfairly treated.
Yep.
Somebody just chime in there on the phone?
Chet did.
Yeah.
I did. I was just agreeing with you, Tim. I do have, whenever the thoughts are done, just a couple of clarifying questions.
Yes, we'll get with you in a second, Chip.
My fear in this is that this particular barber shop is not apparently washing hair. So they don't have sinks at every station, which presumably a hairdresser would have. That's not to say that if they sell this business of a barber shop and another barber shop moves in, there's no change of use, but they could be using a lot more water. We would never know.
We might know by nosy residents or someone telling us. That's the only way we're
Chances
gonna
are you
find
will
out.
not know.
And that's the precedent. You mentioned, you said we use the table all the time, and, categorically, barber shop and hairdresser, to me, fall in the same bucket.
Yeah.
Not that I'm experienced in
I
the matter.
know you're
but-
not you're not a client yourself.
Right.
Before we move on to Chet, I have a question for Mike. Mike, you called DES and requested some information from DES Director Mike Tardif.
Yeah, I
Rob
did.
Tardif.
Rob Tyler, and then he's not replied to my,
He has not
I
replied.
sent him 2 emails.
Okay, so at this point, we have no response from DES.
Nope, no
All right,
response.
the chair is going to recognize Selectman Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had one question answered about I was wondering why we were having this conversation. I must have missed it, that they are not using hair washing stations. So that helps me understand a lot more why we're having the conversation. The other question that I have, I think David Pierce is looking at hairdresser, barbershop, and noticing clearly a difference. And I think that without the sinks in there, it's important to look at not just I do agree that looking at the wording is important, but looking at the spirit of the ordinance is also important. So I kind of have a couple of thoughts on that, which is, and David, can you tell me again, what did you say, like small business without a cafeteria or something along those lines? Was that your category?
The attachment A to our accessibility fee schedule is a table, 2 pages long, and it has categories of how a building could be used.
Yep.
And one of the categories is simply hairdresser, which it has a flow per chair, as Mr. Yurgel just described, Well, there's another category, or several categories under the major headings called office buildings. And so you could have an office building with a cafeteria, without a cafeteria, and a third one simply saying unspecified office space.
Okay. So again, if I understand it correctly, we base our fees off of expected flow. So the unspecified office space could technically apply if they don't have sinks. And I think I also heard about someone saying if someone came in and used it as a barber shop and added those, how would we know? And I could potentially be naive, but when a new business starts, even if it's in the same category, is there no inspection?
That determination is probably made via the planning department, Chet, because when all these things happen, it's considered a change of use or not a change of use, and that's when planning makes a determination on what needs to be done, and then subsequent building permits may or may not be required.
I understand. Okay, so so that is a concern. I agree that a resident or someone would let us know, but that is a concern as well. I just wanted to put those things out there.
Before I recognize Rob, I have one question for the commission. Normally, under state law, you cannot make state laws any less restrictive, but you can make them more restrictive if you choose. You can expand. Is it possible that this commission would consider adding its own use as a barber shop to which we could identify a flow and add it to our own chart? Is that something that we could possibly do as a commission?
Good question for Mike Trank.
Mike Trank, would you like to respond to that question, please?
That's a good question. First of all, I completely agree with Dave's assessment, that the hairdresser category does presume that there are wash stations, hair washing stations associated with those chairs. So, it clearly is going to be a much higher usage. And that's not the case with this particular establishment. In terms of establishing your own criterion, I certainly don't see any reason why you couldn't.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to recognize Rob.
To that point, I believe that we can do it, but I don't necessarily agree that it's in our best interest to do that. As Mike Yurgo said, this was brought into question at court at one point, and the reason why we prevailed was because that we did not change and we abided the chart to the letter. One suggestion or consideration, I guess, for the rest of the commissioners here is, could we or would we be willing to establish the accessibility fee as a hairdresser that shall not have more than 2 wash stations in it? So if it's a hairdresser for 5 chairs, not to exceed 2 wash stations, that would be 150 gallons per day per wash station, right? That would give you 300 gallons per day, and the 5 employees would be 100 gallons per day, for an aggregate of 400 gallons per day, which is less than the treatment unit that they're paying now, and it would be rounded up to 1 treatment unit.
Yeah, because there is a minimum of 1 treatment unit.
However, does that mean that this applicant would need to pay an accessibility fee, or this applicant would fall in under the current use?
He already owns 1 treatment unit,
Okay.
so that
And-
would solve it, in my mind. And that also fixes the billing question that would likely follow the accessibility fee question.
And I'd like to go back to what David suggested. In the office buildings category, unspecified office space is 5 gallons per day per 100 square feet. If you go down two lines only, you'll see recreational facilities, and it says toilet waste only, and it is a 5 gallon per day per person. It's similar in flow and usage, because it's saying there's only a toilet in there. There is no actual hair washing station. So we could do as you have suggested, or we could do as David has suggested, and it's which one is going to be in the better interest of this commission, which course of action. And I think yours gives us some leverage for the future. I don't know if David concurs at this point?
I have no problem. Either we select something that's most
Appropriate.
appropriate out of this list, or we establish a new category, which is defensible and reasonable, and we continue to march forward with it. And Rob has suggested a new category.
Well, what he's doing, he's just making it, by saying he's only allowed 2 sinks and 5 chairs and 5 employees, which stands with the head, along with the category of hairdresser.
Right.
So,
It's a good, fair compromise.
Well, the reason being is that if this business sells in the future, it's likely to stay in the hair care arena, if you will. And this allows the new owner some flexibility if their ideas of the business are different, but yet we have the limitation that keeps it within the bounds of the existing use, or what they've paid for.
So, Rob, you wish a
Makes sense.
facility with up to 2 sinks,
2 washing stations is what I said.
washing stations,
Hair washing stations.
would be a flow of what?
300.
300 for the 2 washing stations, and for the 5 employees, assuming they'd be attending to each chair, that would be 100, it's 20 gallons per day per employee.
So I'm gonna just review what Rob has said so everybody is clear.
Yep.
The suggestion by Rob is that we still allocate this business as a hairdresser in our use category. We would state the maximum allowable sinks at this time would be 2 at 150 gallons per day, which is in accordance with our unit design flow. And since there are 5 chairs, there could be a maximum of 5 employees at 20 gallons per day per employee for 100. So if you add the 2 numbers together, you get 400 gallons per day, DPD, which is a little bit less than what they're already paying for, which is a minimum 1 treatment unit. Therefore, he would be using the system as it is presently being billed, and it would not require any additional fees or changes to our sewer billing system.
It would require a change of use permit with a $50 fee.
Okay,
To
with
change the use.
a change of use permit at $50. And that's be applied for by the owner, Mike?
We apply for by the property owner,
By the property owner, not the business owner.
not the business, the property owner.
And a change of use, that goes to planning?
Nope.
That goes to...
Goes to sewer department?
Sewer,
So it's a sewer change of use.
sewer change.
So, does everyone, including our folks on the phone, understand exactly what Rob's suggestion is? And I'm gonna poll them individually. Mike Trank, are you good with and understand what Rob is suggesting?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable approach.
And Chet Bowen, how do you feel about this approach?
It makes all the sense in the world to me.
Okay, so, do we have any other discussion on this or any other issues to clear up before we move on and call for a motion on this at this time? Mike, do you have anything else from your point of view from sewer?
No, I'm good with that.
So, Rob, would you like to make that in the form of a motion, your suggestion?
Sure.
So would you like to state it again, including the permit at $50, change of use permit with the $50 fee included? I wrote it on my notes.
So, I'd like to make a motion that the sewer accessibility fee for the change of use at number 15 Mass Street for the barber shop be comprised of no more than 2 washing stations at 150 gallons per day per station, and a maximum of 5 employees for an aggregate flow of 400 gallons per day. And that will be recorded under the hairdressers category of the New Hampshire Code of Administrative Rules, Table 1008-1,
Change of use?
and that the application will require a change of use permit, a sewer change of use permit, that has a fee of $50.
Now, you said sewer accessibility fee. Did you mean to say accessibility fee? Because we're not going to charge them an accessibility fee.
So the calculation of the 400 gallons per day for the barber shop, as we've described, is less than the accessibility fee already paid for the previous use.
They never paid an accessibility
And
fee.
their grandfather.
Sewer use charge. It's the sewer use charge that we're talking about, not accessibility fee.
Because they didn't have to pay accessibility fee because it was,
Predated,
they were pre-87.
okay.
So,
Hold on, let's roll this back for Lynn.
so you just need to substitute the words sewer use charges for accessibility fee, which is what you were talking about, sewer use charges.
Okay,
Do you put that as an amendment to your motion?
absolutely.
Want to start over again?
So the calculated sewer use charges.
Yes. But we're not going to lower it to 400. We're staying at the minimum of one treatment unit, which is 450 gallons per day. Correct?
Yeah, it's the minimum.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is any discussion on the motion? I'll make a roll call vote. So, Commissioner Pierce?
Yes,
Commissioner Trepaz?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes. So I will pass this information on, or Lynn will pass this information on to the building department regarding the accessibility, the lack of an accessibility fee and the sewer use charges, so that they can move forward with their certificate of occupancy request.
Did they already do a sewer permit?
No, they gotta come in and do that.
So they still need to come in and do that permit before they can get their
So
CO?
that'll hold up their CO.
Yeah, as soon as they get a permit, $50, we're good.
That won't hold it up for long.
Well, at least it's on them and not on us. Okay. We are going to move on to the second item of business tonight. This is my request to the commission to address this tonight. At the planning board meeting a couple weeks ago on Thursday, the applicant from the corner of Park Lane and South Mass Street has a office building there. The planning board granted his application to change the two upstairs offices into two upstairs apartments. I personally asked the planning director if the applicant had been notified of accessibility fees and sewer use charge changes, and the planning director said yes, she had. I also brought it up at the meeting, and it's in the minutes of the planning board meeting that I notified the applicant that these were coming. In light of the recent situations that we've been in, I am going to request to the other commissioners that we begin a formal notification process via the sewer office, that anyone who receives anything from the planning board or the zoning board of adjustment that requires these notifications be formally notified by the sewer commissioners via the office. Does anyone have any discussion on this
I do,
request?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So, the planning board indicated that it's a change of use.
Yes. No change of use. Oh, excuse me, you are correct. It is a change of use to apartments. Yes, my mistake.
but within the allowed, for the zone of the, it was
Yeah,
allowed.
with
within
no
the zone.
interior.
It's allowable use,
Allowable
but a
use. Yes, it
change
is.
of use.
Yes.
Okay. And then, was that handled, it wasn't handled administratively? This is
Handled at a planning board meeting.
handled at a planning board meeting. But regardless as to whether or not the planning board determines it's a change of use, the sewer commission has its own use, hence the change of use permit that we have. So, is it customary for all applications that go before the planning board to be notified of the sewer change of use requirements?
Well, that's why we have a TRC meeting, and Mike attends TRC meetings, and Mike makes these notifications. But there have been times, I'll let you speak, Mike, there have been times when it's been deemed an administrative decision within the planning office, and sometimes we're not connected in the loop. So, Mike,
There
please.
was no TRC meeting on this.
There you go. So, Mike, what I'm suggesting, Rob, is that we not allow other agencies to make our notifications. Once we know something is happening, I think our commission needs to make its own official notification of applicants to avoid I didn't know we were gonna have to pay a sewer use charge. I thought the sewer accessibility fee paid for my sewer. So we need to over-notify in order to make sure that our position is protected and we're not accused of not treating people fairly and notifying them of their obligations. This is all I want to do. I want to over-notify at this point. David?
Then we had an exact similar case the last time this commission met. A general contractor took out a building permit and was, as a general contractor, he was notified that there would be sewer fees involved with an addition onto a house. But that general contractor, as what you called another agency, never notified the property owner that somewhere down the road, some fees were due. So, yes, a letter to the property owner, independent of whatever was given to the building contractor, general contractor, would be appropriate.
And I think we need to do this on any planning board or zoning approvals of properties where sewers are servicing those buildings or homes, and that they need to be over-notified to protect our position, and that we don't end up being accused of negligence and not notifying, and then it's a public perception. It's a simple letter.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir?
Oh.
Go ahead, Chet.
Are you talking to me?
Yes,
Oh,
Chet.
thank you. Yeah, I really support that. I think it makes a lot of sense. Over-notification is important. I do want to ask, are there any loopholes in that? So one of the thoughts that I had, and you're an independent commission, so I sort of hesitate to even bring it up, but a thought that I had was when a contractor, for instance, pulls that permit, that at town hall potentially, the owner has to sign off, or the business owner or the owner of the property needs to sign off that they are seeing these fees. A letter would be fine with me. I think that's a really great start. But are there thoughts on that, just to be sure that the sewer commission is not put in a position ever again where someone can somehow say the contractor didn't tell me, or the town didn't tell me, or I never got that letter? Is that something worthy of a discussion, or do you think you'd rather start with the letter? We get the prompt, we send it out, and we make sure that it's in the mail and they get it.
Your point's well taken. We may have to include yourself and the select board in the process to follow your course of action, because now it involves the building department over which we have no authority. So
Correct, and that's what I'm asking. Like, maybe we don't need to go there yet. Maybe we try this step first. That's really just what I'm asking. What would you prefer?
Well, there's nothing mentioned in the actual building application about anything about sewer.
Correct.
What
Yeah.
I did is, what I started since our last meeting anyway, is I had this form that I created, and on the back of it is it has a line, and it says "I," and then the ownership would put their name. Acknowledge receipt of this copy of the Goffstown sewer fees. I understand that it is my duty to read, understand, and abide by the procedures outlined. I further understand that all fees are due prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy, and then there's a line for their signature and the date. I've been asking the building department when they give out permits for things to.
So Chet, we're looking at a draft which Lynn has just presented to us this evening. Obviously, you don't have a
Sure.
copy of it, but it's
Right.
it's a one-page draft addressing what the sewer fees would be for various types of construction. And it gives the
Sure.
definition of what those categories would be. And then a second page, or the backside of this form, would be just a acknowledgement by the property owner of the awareness of the information on the other side of the piece of paper.
I would like to comment on the sewer fees, second page, Lynn. There's nowhere it says anything about the property owner.
I can
I think you need to
adjust that.
add something that identifies the signature and the statements made on this second page as a property owner.
Okay, I could put
Because the
property
builder
owner.
the building contractor could certainly sign this and walk out.
Okay,
You
and
need to amend that.
Okay, I'll make that say property owner, and I'll ask them to return it with the building permit.
And can I ask another final, maybe not the final question, but and I think we're on the right track here. Does the sewer commission have any authority to influence whether or not the work can get done if that's not signed and returned by the property owner or the business owner?
It's only tied to the CO, Chet, at that point.
Sure.
The only thing there is under the soil use ordinance, on page 29, that prior to receiving a building permit, it says it's necessary to obtain approval from the soil connection permit, which is in the actual soil use ordinance.
So, and that's not happening, is it?
No.
I don't think it is. Right.
Go ahead, Chet, please.
No, I just said I don't think it is. I think that there's a missing piece where the acknowledgement of that is not happening, and then there is no, I don't want to use the word enforcement, but there's no influence then from the sewer commission to ensure that the people know these are fees that need to be paid.
Does anyone,
That's what I think we're trying to address.
does anyone here feel that anyone who is going to be doing this type of thing needs to actually appear in front of the sewer commission for permission? Is that going too far? Rob?
Well, I think, I have two comments. One, Lynn, I think you need to add the change of use permit to the top of this form.
Yeah, so say that.
And then the other thing is, I mean, if somebody's making change to a property that is served by sewer, they should at least, provide some sort of correspondence to the sewer commission through Lynn as to what it is that they're looking to do. Because not everything will require people to come before us at a meeting, but we should have the opportunity to invite them to a meeting so we can better understand what they're trying to do.
Can I follow up on that, please?
Sure.
And this goes to exactly to our resident who was at our last meeting, who said that if I had known these fees were going to be as much as they were, we might not have done this. And that's a decision that the homeowners have to make, or a business owner has to make prior to an investment. And then at the last minute, we're the bad guys because we have an accessibility fee that nobody mentioned or heard about, quote, and because they weren't notified. Who's on there, Chet?
Chet, yes.
Yeah, I'm on the line. Yep.
Go ahead, Chet.
Oh, I didn't say anything.
Okay, I thought you were
Might
trying
have
to
just
speak.
done-
I was trying to recognize you.
Can I ask a question?
Appreciate that.
When you said they all go to planning, but does
No, they don't
everybody
all go to planning.
Okay, so that's my question.
No.
So we could miss it. They don't all go to TRC, they don't all go to planning.
No.
Right.
So that's
They
what I
go to the
thought.
building department.
Right, okay.
Everybody has to go to the building
Right.
department eventually,
Right.
unless they don't get permits. However,
Correct.
the only time the planning board sees it is when there's a site plan or a change of use that would require a conditional use permit or something. And I think the applicant for Park Lane got a conditional use permit from the planning board to change those. Is that correct, Dave? Was it a conditional use permit?
I don't recall
But
the history on Park Lane.
it almost doesn't matter because.
Well, we have our notice of decision right in front of us. Yeah,
well,
conditional use permit.
They went to the planning board, but,
And received a conditional use permit.
yes.
Right, I just asked that.
But there's really no connection between the planning board and this commission. So we don't know.
Other than they
Correct.
sit 10 feet apart.
Well, and him, but that's,
Yeah, unless I don't get elected again, that's the way it goes.
no, but I think the point being is that I think the onus of responsibility should be on the applicant.
And they're gonna throw it right back in our face because we don't have a checklist, and we don't have this, and we don't have that.
But we send a representative to the technical review session.
If there is one.
But
If
don't
they
all
have
go.
one.
If there is,
That's
there
the
is
problem,
one.
is if it's handed administratively,
Joanne makes a decision whether whether you're gonna appear or not.
but that, no one makes a decision for
That's at the
sewer.
planning level.
That's at the planning board, CRC.
There's also the building department level, which has its own set of rules. And if a sewer connection is involved, that we have to have concrete language or a concrete system that firmly, affirmatively notifies these people that they have to work through the sewer commission.
You know, what if,
Any application served by sewer needs to present a description of the work to the sewer commission, period.
All right, so we're really off topic here at
And
this
put it at
point.
the top of this.
Right now, what's happening is, any building permit gets done, I get a copy of it, anywhere in town.
Yeah, but that's the permit after the fact,
That's the permit itself, that's not the application for the
or
permit.
a change of use.
on the building department side. I'm talking about building
Correct.
department.
So, Mr. Chair, whatever, I'm having a hard time hearing, but whenever you can recognize me, that'd be.
Go ahead, Chet, you're on right now.
He's playing by the rules.
Oh, perfect. I don't want to talk over anybody. I
Oh,
just
you're
want to
good.
make sure, but what I try to do is figure out where does this originate, and can there be a prompt immediately to the owner, not counting on the contractor, but immediately to the owner, and then we get acknowledgement from the owner that there will likely be fees involved. We offer them the option to come speak to the sewer commission, but either way, if they choose not to, and they've acknowledged that there are fees involved, we're not stuck in you as a commission, you are not stuck in a position where they can say and have plausible deniability that they didn't know these fees were there.
And
That's
where-
the position I feel like the commission gets stuck in, not often, but often enough that it's a problem.
You set, Chet? Because Dave would like to speak.
So, yes, so we're still back to a situation where Lynn Pooler has drafted a letter, not a lot, but drafted a chart explaining potential fees to a potential customer.
Yeah, but the potential customer has to know that they have to come and get that from us, and we have to be sure the notification process is complete.
I'm just wondering, I'm in the department when they do the building permits. I could ask Mark or the building department before she types up the actual building permit to give me a copy of the actual building permit, and I can make sure that I can either put it with it when they go to pick it up so that they get it.
I really don't think it's your obligation to ask the building department if something is applicable. I think it's the buildings department's job to know if a house is on a sewer connection. And if a house is on a sewer connection, the building department's obligation should be to notify the sewer commission. We shouldn't have to have you asking every time an application comes by, is that one on sewer? That's not how the process should work.
I agree with you, Mr. Chair.
David?
I agree, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to continue on a thought. So we're kind of off topic here. The topic of discussion is, should we send a formal letter to the 1776 Associates for the Park Lane approval for a conditional use permit to change to apartments? Should we send him a letter notifying him that he is responsible for accessibility fee possibilities, or at the very least, sewer use charge changes? That's my position at this point, and I'd like to get the commission to decide on whether we're going to be over-notifying or relying on the system to work, which it obviously doesn't.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I'm assuming that there's a permit application form required to go with any building permit any building permits. Would it be possible to amend that permit application form to put in a checkbox for the sewer commission?
I think this is all great ideas for down the road. And I think we need to have this conversation and continue this conversation, and even have meetings with the sewer commissioners, with the building department, the planning department, and the zoning department to get all these things ironed out. But for tonight,
Sure.
for this approved application, I am suggesting that the sewer commission send a formal letter to Mr. Barton stating that the sewer commission has concerns that you want to make sure you are properly notified of changes to your sewer use fees and.
Yes, such a letter should go to the owner of the Park Lane facilities that's being modified through an approved plan from the planning board. He should receive a letter that his sewer fees are gonna change.
Well, I think to further that,
You gotta do something else besides that. You're gonna have to, in the letter, you're gonna have to say that he's gonna have to apply for a source use application or change.
Well, we can do that.
That's one thing he's gotta do. And he will be subject to sewer accessibility fees for additional apartments.
I think to further that thought, the applicant's gonna need to provide some information to the sewer commission that's gonna describe the work to be done. There's 2 commercial units remaining. We have no idea how many square feet that is.
Well, it'll be the first floor, we have the square
They're already paying their sewer use fees. It's already an approved
They already
use.
they already got 450 gallons. They already paid that years ago.
They have 450 gallons. I understand that, but they have 2 units that are gonna be based on square footage, correct?
No, they won't,
Why?
because they're apartments. Apartments are not based on square footage.
I'm sorry, maybe I misread. I thought it was 4 commercial units. There were gonna
They
be
got 4
2 commercial units and
Downstairs,
2 apartments.
yeah, apartments
So,
are single.
The 2 commercial units are remaining commercial units as they are now. They are not changing.
That's right.
So
Right,
there's no change to the first floor. The second floor is being converted from 2 office apartments, or whatever you want, office
Office
building,
space.
to 2 apartments.
Right.
So that's the conditional use permit for the change.
how
for
many
this.
bedrooms in the apartment?
We don't
Doesn't
know.
matter. It's a single family apartment. Apartment is 1 treatment unit.
The state listing has apartments, 1 bedroom, and then another category for 2 bedrooms.
And another category says right here in your sewer use ordinance.
Say again?
The sewer use ordinance states that a dwelling unit shall be a single-family home, an apartment unit or residential condominium unit. An apartment building, an apartment is 1 unit. It's a living unit. So it'd be assessed at 1 treatment unit.
Now, if you read this planning board notice of decision, we're talking about proper notification. Nowhere in this notice of decision does it say anywhere that sewer use fees or anything applies to this application.
Okay, you're at a stage of the planning board action. Once the planning board approves something,
I was,
6 months later, they come in and get a building permit.
I was told by the
And-
planning
and We
department,
just discussed that at the building permit process, such notifications could go out. But such notifications should have happened months earlier when the action came to the planning board.
I'm telling you that I was told by the planning department that I didn't need to do this because it would be in the sewer use assessment bills would be included in the notice of decision. And it's not in the notice of decision. It's another
Of the
misstep
planning board.
by the planning board.
So I repeat what I just said. Applicants come to the planning board for certain changes in their property.
Yeah,
The plan is approved.
yep.
Months later, when the owner gets financing, they come back to the town hall for a building permit
Right.
within 12 months. Well, with the building permit we just discussed 10 minutes earlier, then such a notification could go to the owner. But why couldn't such a notification be sent out when the application was before the planning board? Why wait months?
What if the application is denied at the planning board? What's the point of doing it? You have to wait till after the planning board decisions are made.
Would you as
Which is why we're here tonight.
Would you, as a, putting on an accessory dwelling or something needing planning board action, would you like to know all of your future costs at the planning stage rather than at the,
Well, then, I don't know who's going to be in the middle of this, because if someone comes in with an application to the planning department, now you're going to put the onus on the planning department to recognize that sewer fees are accessible, are going to be a charge, and they have to tell them up front like that. Yeah, that'd be great, but I don't know how to get that done. We have a hard enough time getting people noticed after they get an approval.
What if planning board gave this out at that stage?
No, planning board gives out enough stuff. The planning board is not responsible to be the purveyor of sewer use charges and sewer use fees. It's not their job.
Again, going back to what I said earlier, I think the owner's responsibility
Of course it
is
is.
on the applicant, and that if you have an action that is on a piece of property that has sewer, then it is on you to present your action to the sewer commission for determination.
Well, then somehow that's going to have to get written into the checklist upstairs for them to know that.
I mean,
Because it's not there now, and Michael attests to that.
it's been a long time
Correct.
since I've been on a planning board in a different state, but typically in the state planning regs, there is a provision that the property must be, sewer must be accounted for on the property.
It's right here in the notice of decision. Will the, number 6, this use will be adequately serviced by necessary public utilities and by community facilities and services of sufficient capacity to ensure the proper operation of the proposed use.
We didn't
Well-
make that determination.
No, we didn't make that determination. That was granted by the planning board.
They don't have the authority to grant that for sewer.
Well, they go to comments from department heads and department employees. And unless it was a situation like when the new building wanted to go in next to the Bartlett Elementary School, where there wasn't enough capacity for that building to go in, they had to provide off-site improvements somewhere else in town because we didn't have the capacity for that building to be built there. Correct or incorrect?
But if another department's making the determination for us, then
Well,
we're
I
never
think
gonna
maybe
be
we
able
need
do
to,
that.
I think maybe then we gotta start having more concrete talks with these departments about what is our position and what we want done. And I agree, completely.
Because, I mean, otherwise we're reactionary to everything that, when someone's looking for a CO, it's the first time they hear about change of use permit, accessibility fee, the fact that their sewer bill is gonna go up, they don't know how much. You know, getting back to this particular item, my understanding is that the total flow would be calculated for this mixed use based on the commercial property square footage and the units of apartments based on the schedule, and then they own one treatment unit, and then we would have to see what the delta is for their new use.
Correct.
Because you take an apartment building behind Moose Club Park, there's 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. Each one is one treatment unit. 2 bedrooms, 1 treatment unit. It's a living unit, so it's considered one. Under this, under your sewer use ordinance.
Back to the agenda item, please.
Well, this is the agenda item because
Well, we're trying to, should a letter go to the owner of,
Well, that's what you're trying to do, is get the letter saying what sewer accessibility fees gotta be. You gotta put that in the letter.
I
If you
think,
want to know them front, you gotta tell them.
well, then that means you're gonna have to make the calculations, but you don't have the plans. So it's, the simplest fact is, the letter should state clearly that based on your conditional use permit that was granted by the planning board, you may be eligible for an accessibility fee as well as increased sewer use fees. Please see the sewer commission and to determine these fees when you have your plans completed. Something that takes the onus off of the sewer commission not properly notifying these people. Because in the event that Mr. Barton finds that this is gonna cost him more money than he thought, he can revert back to 4 offices because it's already a use.
yes,
So the point is, it's like the applicant from Lewis Street that said, at the record,
it could influence what he charges for rent.
it could do a lot of things. It could change the whole project.
Right, good.
So I think we have to, I would like to have that letter drafted and sent to protect our position. It's who's up, somebody want to speak?
Chet's, only Chet's on the line.
Chet?
Sorry, I have a habit of just saying, yes, I agree. I'll
Okay.
stop doing that on the phone. I
Okay.
apologize.
No problem.
As long as you keep saying that, you're good.
So, I think in this one case tonight, we should protect our position and send the letter. If we want to do something different down the road with applications and checklist forms and sewer fee forms, I'm in total favor of all that. But I would hate to see that this applicant would move forward and start construction on the apartments in another week, and it's like,
I agree. I think Lynn ought to send the letter.
so let's have a motion, and then what the text of the letter should be. That's important. Unless you want me to just work it out with Lynn after the meeting, and I'll tell her what I think we should have in the letter. But I'm not 3
Oh,
commissioners, I'm one person.
What's the address on Park Lane?
It's not actually Park Lane,
In your
it
notes.
is.
It's applicant is
15, no.
Map 31, lot 2.
I'm sorry.
It's actually 152 South Mass.
Thank you, Mike. 152 South Mass Street.
Motion that the chair of the commission send a letter to the owner of 152 South Mast notifying the owner of sewer fees that are applicable with the change of use that was recently approved by the planning board. And that
That's it.
authorize him to sign that letter.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? The roll call vote, Commissioner Pierce?
Dave says yes.
Rob?
Bob says yes.
Chair votes yes. Tim says yes. So I will work with Lynn on the text of that letter, and we will get it out to the 1776 Associates at 152 South Mass Street.
We have a bigger problem to eventually solve, and that's what we spent most of our time, is the internal coordination between various departments in the town hall. And the responsibilities of the SORTA Commission to notify our customers.
Now, I will step up right now and say that I went in and spoke to the Building and Zoning and Planning Department because these 3 items were thrown up in the air, and I needed to talk with them about what we're going to do. I would be happy to, at this point, at a later point, to have the commissioners decide which one of the commissioners is going to be representative of the commission to act as a lead person to go in and do these talks and bring a substantive information back to the commission for review. All right? So I'm not volunteering to do it.
The person
who lives Okay.
closest to
Dave, make a motion.
You need a break from cutting brush, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. The last item on tonight's agenda
I injure myself.
was, I was informed by the building department that we may be seeing a request for for Putnam's to reuse the second floor of their restaurant. This is not, I don't know if there's an application, so I'm trying to be tiptoe lightly here, but I think the sewer commission should hopefully have some consensus on what we're gonna do. It's my information, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, that when Vignola's was there prior, there was a second-floor apartment on that home that was occupied as an apartment. To my knowledge, the Putnams, when they purchased the building, have only used the second floor for storage and for a little bit of office space. If, in fact, they want to reinstate the apartment for residential use, I'd like to have a consensus by this commission on how we would want to proceed if that comes up and we have to discuss the matter at a future meeting.
Well, right now, Putnam's is only getting billed for 7 treatment units, which is the complete restaurant.
Okay?
Nothing upstairs.
Okay?
So that's probably, the apartments were probably prior to 1986. Then it went through, like you say, went to storage when Putnam's bought it.
Okay?
So they're paying the use of charge for the entire restaurant, no apartments, not the second floor.
Okay?
So if they want to put apartment upstairs, they would have to apply for a change of use again, and they'd be subject to source accessibility fees.
However, it was an apartment prior.
It
Why
is-
would we want to have
Because
this?
we're only getting billed for the restaurant itself seating.
What would stop us from just adding the proper amount of treatment units to the apartments?
Because the sewer use ordinance says you have to purchase flow.
However, it was a home and it was an
It don't
apartment
matter.
prior.
They're paying for 7 units, which is paying for the seating capacity of the restaurant.
But
What
Not
would-
paying for the second floor.
What was prior to that, Mike? What did we have there prior? We had a restaurant downstairs?
We had a restaurant downstairs.
And an apartment
Was empty upstairs, and they did an addition, they did a seating addition last year.
I'm talking about when it was Vignola's.
It probably was on sewer. And it probably was prior to the 1987, but
No, Vignola's was in business prior to
They're
1987.
only being charged for the seating capacity
Capacity
of
of the restaurant only.
If the use is changing, what's difficult with, it's a change of use.
it's a change of use, and you gotta purchase capacity.
And I disagree, because prior use...
Disagree, you're gonna disagree with your sewer use on
Prior
this.
use was a restaurant downstairs and an apartment upstairs. And that went on until the Putnams purchased the property, and that was after 1987. So that business with that apartment was in operation and paying some sort of sewer use charges. Now we have a restaurant that increased their capacity and has paid the extra capacity and is paying the extra use charges.
And here's a letter from the Goffstown Sewer Commission back in 2001 stating they were increasing their sewer usage back when they did the restaurant.
That's fine, I agree with that, because the restaurant seating capacity changed.
Right, but that's all they're getting billed for. They're not getting billed for the upstairs.
So what I'm saying is, what is stopping this commission from considering that by reestablishing the apartment, which was a prior approved use prior to 1987, when the sewer accessibility fees were established after that date, that they should not just simply be charged for a sewer use fee and not be charged an accessibility fee? That's what I'm asking this commission.
That sounds reasonable that the accessibility fee is grandfathered, but the use fee would be
Increased.
a current condition of change.
That's absolutely.
If anybody adds an apartment to a building, you gotta buy flow. It's in your sewer ordinance.
They're
black
not
and white.
asking for an apartment, it was already there, Mike.
They're not getting billed for it, they never
It
were
doesn't
charged.
matter whether they're getting billed for
They
it
should
or
have
not.
been, then if those are the apartment, they should have been getting billed for 8 treatment units.
Well, then somebody, is that their fault that they weren't getting billed for it?
I don't know, I wasn't doing the managing
So-
portion at that time.
So, my suggestion is, Mike has a bunch of information that pertains to the calculation of both the accessibility fees that were paid and the current sewer use fees. I think it would be reasonable for us to get copies of that, instead of doing it right now. Read through it, understand the progression, and then discuss it when we have a formal
We
application.
can have an agenda item at a meeting our next monthly meeting.
Does it matter that they want to move into that apartment ASAP?
I don't care about it because they have to come and see us.
So, the accessibility fee,
I care that we get it right, but I am not going to be pressured, because I sit on the planning board, and David sits on the planning board, and we get pressured in decisions, and 6 months later, nothing has happened at those sites. We see it all the time. So, with that said, no one has come to us with this. I brought this up because of what I heard at the building department, and I'm trying to head it off at the pass. So, the point is that we're not going to have another emergency meeting between now and our next monthly meeting. And if that becomes an issue, then I'm going to say, I'm sorry, you should have come to us sooner. And that's how it's going to be. So Rob, I concur with what Rob has said. I think we should get the information from Mike and then have a substantive discussion at our next monthly meeting.
so the thing that I'm drawing from this, just in general, is that the accessibility fee follows the deed, and it's based on the increase to the current configuration of that property.
Yes.
So whatever it might have been, that gets rolled up into the current tally. So if that was an unused space, and somebody deemed it unused, and the total was 7 treatment units, and then they want to add it to something else, then that's a consideration that will go through all the paperwork.
What they probably did is they probably took the 450 they have for the house itself and turned that into the restaurant.
It probably became part of it, but at the end of the day, they're charged 7 treatment units for the configuration that's there now.
And unless,
Configuration's changing, we need to address it.
and unless the apartment was officially suspended use of, they would have had to come to the sewer commission and request a reduction in their fees because we're not using the apartment anymore, which I don't know if that happened or not. So if they came in and made a formal reduction for the fees, that's a different subject, but I don't know if that ever happened.
Huh?
Is this mine, or do you want to send that around?
That's Mike's. Why don't you give it to Lynn, and Lynn can scan it and email it or copy it to us, however it gets done.
Good answer.
Okay.
All right, we have any input from either Mike Trank or Chet Bowen on this subject?
I would just say I'm inclined to get more information, of course, but if they never came in and asked for a reduction, and the only thing that has happened is that there's been an increase, using the apartment again, I don't see how we add another accessibility fee to that. But again, I'll wait for more information.
Okay. All right. We don't have any other agenda items. Anybody have anything they would like to bring forward as considered under other business? Okay.
I'm good.
Motion?
Mr. Chair, a motion to terminate this session,
Okay, there's been a motion to terminate the
Second case
adjournment.
termination.
to adjourn.
I'm looking for my second.
I did,
Okay, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. David?
Yes.
yes.
Rob? Tim, yes. Thank you very much for the listening in. Thank you for phoning in, Chet, and thank you for phoning in, Mike.
My pleasure.
Have a good night, everyone.
Night.
Bye.